since it's about 11 or 1:01 currently, I will start by saying I am not Courtney Kearney. I am sporting the CKC shirt, but the actual identity I go by is Kim Sheldon, and I am one of the project managers here at C. Kearney Consulting. And I'm happy you all could join us here today. I'm going to keep an eye on the attendees, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's times just to make sure we do get rolling on what we're going to talk about today, which is Chapter 9 of the CRM Chat book, which was written by Courtney Kearney and Chas Ross Monroe. And they're fabulous, brilliant, and they captured some of that in this book, and we'll talk about a little bit of it today. But just so we know who's all on the call with us, I'd like us to go around and introduce ourselves by giving our name, what firm you're with, what geographic location you are in, and if you do have a copy of the book and have read it. So again, I'll start that I am Kim Sheldon, a project manager here with C. Kearney Consulting. I live in a northern suburb of Dallas named McKinney, which my joke always is, I'm closer to Oklahoma than Dallas in traffic. So I do have a copy of the book and was lucky enough when they were writing it to be one of the early reviewers of it. And so I've definitely read it, but we'll go around and see who else is on the call. So Denise, we do love the shirt. So
yeah, it's a happy shirt, and that's why I wear it. I'm Denise Yancey, and I'm with Atna Environmental up in Anchorage, Alaska. I am the database administrator for the marketing and BD group. I've been working with C. Kearney Construction for almost 4 years, something like that, and they have helped tremendously getting our CRM going. And I've been hearing about all these little advice bits for the last 4 years, and I was glad to finally get it in print form in the book, and I did get the book right away, and it's great. I absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, it is wonderful. Thank you and welcome. Natalie Price, well, there's spoiler alert. I gave her name up. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm Natalie Price. I'm from Kraus Anderson. We're a general contractor in Minneapolis. I do have the book and I read it as you go because I feel that then the info is more relevant. So yes, I do have a book and bought one for everybody on my team.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Vance. I'm a senior project manager at C. Kearney Consulting. I am also in North Texas, and I have read the book and I do have a copy of it.
Very good. Very succinct. Callie, if you could introduce yourself.
Hey, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. I switched headphones.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. I am Callie Fields. I am our CRM manager for LJA Engineering. And I am in Houston, and I don't remember if you asked for any other information.
Oh, just if you have a copy of the book.
Yes, I do have a copy of the book.
Right, you don't have to actually show it. It's on our system. There it is.
Got it.
What I do love is the flags that some of us have that are like, oh yeah, that part. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Welcome to the call. Ashley?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Ashley, thanks, and I am the senior CRM specialist at Cooper Carey. We're an architectural and design firm based in Atlanta, and I am in Atlanta, and I do have a copy of the book with my flags. I just started reading it. I just got it, so I am not that far along in it. This is something new we're doing here. Like I'm the first person in my position at this firm, so CRM is something that they are finally, taking a handle on and making a priority. So excited for that.
That is wonderful. And then finally, Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Curtis. I'm the Marcom specialist with CKC. I'm in Portland, Oregon. And yes, I am working my way through the book as we go chapter by chapter and learning a lot because this is a new topic for me.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad we could all spend a little time this afternoon talking about CRM. And if you haven't read the book, if you're reading as we go, what you'll find is that this is a dialogue. This isn't PowerPoint slides and teaching moment. We do have some of those that Courtney's already spoken to that we have links to on our website. The structure for these calls, and I'm going to put it in the chat, and I think it was also in the invitation y'all received, is kind of a focused set of questions that do appear at the end of the chapter that are kind of reflection and open for discussion. So what this chapter is the book itself takes each step about considering getting a CRM and recognizing CRM is not a tool. It is not a specific database. It is not necessarily one size fits all plan. What it is, though, is recognizing your firm's why you need to gather information, how you're going to do it. A tool may be the support system for it, but it's not about that. It's about the mindset and the culture. And so as the chapters have gone on, it's been about analyzing your data and implementing and things. So at this point in the process of what the book is, we're talking about business intelligence, and that's the data hygiene part of the CRM system. And some of the phrases in this particular chapter have stuck with me, but sort of the distrust and verify the data that you see, you know, just because it's in the system doesn't mean it's correct. Making sure that it's a process that when we'll get to like the third question here or so about the maybe fourth, the data hygiene, there's a funny metaphor they use, which I appreciate. But taking the first question about, is your staff responsible for maintaining your data so it can be trusted for your data-driven decision-making? Just around the room here, the call, I guess, is there anyone that has a process in place for maintaining data? Because once you get implemented and it's all up there, that was that moment in time, but then things continue to evolve. So do you all have staff that's responsible, or you yourself responsible for the data being maintained? Hi, Denise.
Everyone in BD and marketing, that's about 10 people, all have licenses, and yes, we all are responsible. We've also had project managers, directors, and presidents added to it, and they are responsible, but I don't know how much they actually do, but they do have important information, so we're constantly asking them, hoping it will become automatic, that they will just put it in themselves.
Definitely. Does anyone else have a similar experience where they have kind of a lot of individuals in BD or marketing that have their hand in it?
Yeah, at our firm, most project managers like across the board have access to the system, and they are heavily encouraged / told that they need to be updating their information, adding their clients, and then now we've built in a system for all of our projects to do that. What I don't have a grasp on is how you make sure that the information is good, since we have so many people adding stuff all the time, but they are expected, as well as our marketing staff, expected to add to the system.
Does anyone have any process best practice at playing off of the question that Callie asked, that is to help make sure the information that goes in is good? I can give some insight in what firms I've worked with have done, but I'm curious on the call if anyone has a process. For example, one of the things, it does involve a database that one of the clients I've worked with, when they have a new project description in the projects area, when they're using like a new job for the first time, or they're building off of a story that maybe had a change order or some significant lesson learned, pretty much anyone can enter that, and they want to not restrict it because they want to get that in. However, once that has been a changed field, there's like a workflow or some sort of a trigger that copies a person who will then approve it. And it doesn't really lock it down. You know, it's not like, oh, until it's approved, it can't be used, but it increases the awareness that something was added and changed. So that kind of keeps a level of oversight on it. I also know where I worked, we had sort of owners of the different groupings. So when we had new employees, there was one individual that was assigned always to get their previous firm's information for the new superintendent or the new engineer, just so that that could be input. But we wouldn't all be surprised the day we used that knowledge, or we wanted to see what connections we had at a firm. Somebody else was over kind of the project's information, just, you know, always was in, and as it sometimes happens, operations used a different database than what marketing used. So, you know, just kind of sitting in on some of their meetings to recognize what stories might be there. And so we broke up the content by the topic, and then we had people that were overseeing it, sort of like I said, as owners of those and, different firms, if you're a one-man band and you're swinging the hoops and the plates are spinning in the air, you obviously can't do all those separate things, but, just the triggers sometimes these systems will have, allowing you to know something changed, to know if the data is good. And then to me, I have dual monitors, always I have a system open, and if I find out the reference is not the correct best reference anymore or something, like changing it immediately, because in proposal world, sometimes you'll believe in your heart of hearts you're going to fix that right away, and then you get slammed and all of a sudden a week's happened and maybe some other person's already looked at it and used, outdated information that was previously the best choice. So it's constantly a maintenance activity, but that's the fun part. Did anybody else have anything to add to that first question before we move on? Well, if it comes up and we touch on other aspects, feel free. The second question there, does your firm have a culture of data stewardship? And it sounds like, Denise, from what you've shared, you've really pushed for having, the people that have the big conversations, have the knowledge, getting in there and maintaining. So I think that's a huge cultural advantage that your firm has.
And we're using it on an almost daily basis for reports and things. So the expectation after having it for so many years is that, of course, we have the data available. And so that's part of data stewardship, is knowing where the data comes from. Right. And trusting it, that it is okay to use and it's not an outdated spreadsheet or something. Yeah, that's wonderful. Does anyone else feel, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, in general, I see a lot of firms that do have good stewardship. They set up maintenance reports and they're checking their data regularly. And they have the mindset that CRM is a living entity. It's going to evolve and mature over time. So they understand it's not a set and forget. They have different processes, but they'll set up methods to basically check in on their data periodically to make sure that it is being maintained and nurtured in a way that is useful down the road.
Yeah, you're so right about reports and things, as far as even just tracking. If you send out communications through email, making sure anybody added recently has an email, because that may not be the first thing that came to mind. They put a phone number in, which I know we're so email forward now, maybe that isn't the best example, but it's just recognizing the complete data is captured and not letting it sit too long incomplete, and just having those touch points, whether it's 30 minutes a week or something, that you run those reports and then circulate them. That's a huge reminder. So thank you. And that kind of touches on the third question about, do you have data policies, standards, and expectations prioritized from the top down? Does anyone have any thoughts on that response, the way your firm works?
So we do have supposedly support from the top down, and what we're finding issues with is like group leaders, sector leaders, all this stuff are pushing it to their employees, but the employees aren't doing it despite that top-down push. So I don't even know what to do with that when somebody's head of department's telling you to do it and then they just don't do it. It's not quite working for us.
Yeah, there are thoughts as far as like incentivizing, or carrot versus stick kind of logic, where it's like, reward for the person at random that did do something and they get called out for praise. And, I know we have had at the firm I was at, we would use the opportunities grid for tracking what ongoing leads and prospects we had, kind of in a format that we used to ask people to update before the meeting, and no one did. And it was a Monday meeting. So, no one thought, or they heard the weekend about something and they, just didn't have the time before that started. So we would do real-time edits. And if it wasn't in there, then the president and the SVP that were in there were like, all right, we'll talk about it next week, I guess. And, BD would get all like, well, no, I wouldn't, it's a hot topic. I just learned about it. Yeah, well, it's got to be in there. And so that was sort of for the chase of a project, not so much the maintaining of information or some of those other details. But I would think in some way, if those individuals who, if you do have the buy-in at the upper levels and they are strongly encouraging, but it's still not getting done, recognizing however it might impact those individuals' jobs directly, if it can be correlation. I don't know. I see C Vance, you're kind of, sorry, Courtney Vance goes by C Vance. So, because we have two Courtneys, that's how it works. But did you have any other thoughts on how to influence people to do what they're voluntold to do?
Yeah, not so much with getting leadership. You know, there's no silver bullet for that one. But with regards to what individual users can do, one thing I did prior to coming to CKC was I knew I had maintenance reports that I had to run. I knew what I was looking for. So I would create calendar reminders in my Outlook, and I would put the link to that report in my Outlook so that I would know every month or every week, whatever it needed to be cadence wise, that I should check in on my data and see where the holes are so that I could update it when it was a manageable amount rather than a giant elephant that would take forever to digest. Yeah.
And having those links there, so then you didn't even have to necessarily go hunt. You know, it's automated as one can do it. The nudge is right there, and it's just then the doing it part. Yeah, because there's the things that interrupt, and I think we live by those electronic calendars so much now. So has anyone else on the call had other successful things that work, lessons learned that maybe wouldn't be repeated if you could do it again, do it over? It's sort of recognizing the individual personalities involved. Yeah, it is a tough one. Small groups, incentivizing, just, you know, praise is all that is sometimes, is recognizing job well done and we really appreciate you.
Yeah, that's, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm just going to say that's something that we've been struggling with, because we do want like our principals and project managers to input the information. But the pushback that we're getting is that they really don't see the value in doing that, because we're not able to give them proper outputs because we don't have the data. So it's just like, how do we incentivize them, you know, to see all, you know, the nice reports and dashboards that we can give to them when we don't have a means to do that at the moment. So that's something we're struggling with at the moment.
Yeah, it does take time because, you know, good data is data that has matured. And so, yeah, it's kind of a snowball. You have a small one and then it grows. But when you're in those early stages, it is definitely a struggle, because it's hard to visualize, to abstract it for those that are not in the system all the time.
Yeah. And they're like, do you want me to, you know, put time towards this billable project, or do you want me to put my time towards entering data into the system? So it always gets pushed to the back burner. So we'll get there.
Yeah, and to have the vision, like you're saying, for the output tools, well, for the report to work, and however those individuals, if, you know, they're in a project active mindset, or if they're in the chase, just recognizing if we could quantify how many things we've gone after, or if we're going after jobs in the right sector, this will be what we use as our decision-making tool. This will take away the emotion. It'll show us that we have a higher hit rate if we knew, you know, those answers, or, you know, and it's hard to know exactly how it's set up, but just if it can be the why, going back to that, why are we capturing this, is to get this output. It is not the function of capturing the data, but the capturing the data are the legs that whole giant, you know, tower is going to stand on. So, you know, it's kind of maybe going back to those conversations about what do you need and what do you feel you're not getting. And if they're like, well, I would be great if I could have X, Y, Z. Okay, well, I need these steps. And, you know, maybe you don't all or nothing, but you spend 15 minutes a week on the data. It might be more than they're doing. You know, it doesn't have to be, I didn't work on my billable project, but
Yeah.
just maybe a little bit of 30 minutes here and there, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts. And that kind of touches, I guess, a little bit on the last question, but before, if actually I will do it out of order. That last question, does every employee understand their data role as an editor, auditor, analyst, consumer, leader, or officer? So kind of, Ashley, like if the consumer, if the people that might want the output, what are they wanting? And then you can back into the different roles as far as, you know, maybe one person, they feel overwhelmed because they think they have to do all of it. And really what you're needing from them is not the all of it. It's just a particular role. But in the book, they do talk about, with some explanation, you know, each of these roles is vital and every employee is responsible. It's not just on one person in marketing or in one department to be doing all of it. You need to have the influence from above. You need to have the person analyzing the data. Otherwise, it's just a lot of numbers or it's a lot of something, but what does it mean? And the dashboards on some of these programs help. But if you're not analyzing the data, then you're not really using it as a tool. You're just really capturing things. And that sort of feels stale. And like C. Vance had mentioned, it's a living situation. But does anyone have any other input, maybe how their departments or company are structured for data roles as the ones suggested here, or maybe some others? Yeah, it's kind of thinking at it from a different direction where the responsibility is spread over every employee. And that I think is the focus that Courtney and Chaz were trying to draw, which is everybody, you know, whether if it's bad information, that's the auditor, that's somebody that's verifying it. If it's to be improved for the way it's written, you know, there's all sorts of different input people can provide. And so whether they're assigned to it or they just know when they're reviewing, if they're like, that's not the right number. We just had a situation where a group had added a bunch of projects and they kind of did it all at once. And so it really skewed their numbers as far as how successful they were that month, but the projects weren't all won this month. They were won over time, but when we were looking at it, it really was kind of crazy. And so they were like, well, why? And it was simply that they got added on a certain day. But kind of, you know, just recognizing that if that hadn't been, if you didn't stop and look at it and then recognize that was the reason and what can we do to level it to show reality, it's only going to produce what the fields show, and that all showed the same month and year. So, you know, just kind of staying on top of it and having people recognize the role they serve and going back to the why we're doing this ultimately. So out of order, the fourth question there was, at your firm, is data hygiene practiced daily to build data integrity, or is it regarded as a one-time project? And that is what C. Vance had mentioned about, like, that you get that big monster in front of you if you haven't looked at your contacts. And, you know, I gosh, since the last holiday season and a whole year or 11 months have gone by, and there's so much it looks like to update. And so if it's more periodic, paced out, that's easier. The metaphor that they use in the book that I love is going to the dentist. You know, it's recommended you go to the dentist every 6 months. Well, do you only brush your teeth at the dentist once every 6 months? Like, likely no. You do it every day. You do it sometimes twice a day, sometimes after every meal. You know, you're in the database all the time. You're always doing it. Or, you know, we check it once a week. Whatever it is, there is hygiene involved. And I just loved when I read that. I was like, so true. It's just, and if you don't using the dental, if you choose not to brush your teeth and only go that one time, I bet you'll get a talking to, because that's not what we've been raised to know is right. So now we kind of have to, in the similar mindset, you know, not touching this and putting it in there once and then just expecting every 6 months or for that meeting, I will check. It's going to come back, but it's, you know, you're going to have more to do and to recover from than if you just would take it in small, I'll say small bites. So that ties back to the teeth, eating, food, dental. But that at each firm, the practicing daily, I don't know. Denise, you guys say you're in it all the time. And is there a frequency you could even, or you're just like, you know, all day people are into the database making adjustments or entering. So it's just ongoing. Yeah, so that to me is like, that's perfect in that way, but there are a lot of hands in it. So you kind of do need to make sure there are some checks and balances, or, you know, double checking that things aren't getting entered incorrectly. Or one firm was tracking certifications, and the way that they were defining them, some were using OSHA, which is a well-known teaching, you know, organization, and others were omitting that, but calling it something else. And then there was a question as to whether it was the right class and was it the same, you know, like, just people are in it and they're doing consistently what they know to do, but it may not be the same as the next person, and all of a sudden then you have a confusion and you want to clarify. So again, just peeking in to make sure those things are standard. Yes, Denise, do you have an example?
Yeah, since I was with it since the beginning, I got used to doing everything a certain way, because when it goes bad, then you adjust it and you fix it, right? And you do it the new way, right? Well, I have to keep my hands away when other people are editing or auditing, and if they do it a little bit different, if it doesn't hurt anything, I just leave it alone. But I have to train myself not to automatically fix, the formatting or the way that they entered it or how they entered it. I mean, I have to let go at some point, to let them be the auditor, because they might have good ideas.
It is hard to do though, especially like you said, you were doing it all. And just seeing that it will end up okay, or maybe like you're saying, they'll do something that you wouldn't have thought of and it actually does work just as well or better or is useful. Yeah. Oops, I thought somebody else you were raising your hand, but you were adjusting. Does anyone else have any other insight as far as like the data hygiene practice at your firm?
I set up reports that I get weekly on all new projects that have been opened, so I can like go back and look at them after they've been opened, because we do have a BD report that goes out every Friday. And then I get reports when every week for new firms that have been opened in the system, so I can double check to make sure they're not duplicates, because we all have that duplicate issue.
Yeah, right. I agree. And then there's just a subtle, like a comma was missing or a misspelled word or something. And some databases will understand it's close, but then you start building stories for two different firms when it truly is one firm. And that distorts the pictures that the graphics that some of the output comes out in. So it is excellent. I think that you're saying like weekly, you're keeping up with it. So it's you can trust it. That's really the point, is it should be the single source of truth, is where this database, everyone's in it, is correct. You don't have off examples. And it is so hard when operations or some other groups are using their own databases. And it's like, well, can we get some of that information? Because it would really round out our stories, or we could really draw parallels and really recognize, did we hit what we projected in our costs and our profits and our margins, when you see the reality that isn't then input, how it all links together. But that is a topic for another day, because we have reached the 1:30, and like I said, local time for me. Definitely want to be respectful, but the next time we are chatting about CRM, it'll be Enrich Your Vision. So that will be a different bookmark in my book by then. But I appreciate all of y'all joining, and I hope you got some takeaways, and I saw some notes being taken. So I think this was a great conversation. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Great
Bye.
meeting.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.